Welcome to the Heart of Racing with Neil Breen and Will Freedman. Well, rarely has racing seen a rise like it, if ever. 8 years ago, in her 20s, she arrived in Australia doing what young people do, exploring the world. She took up a job with Gai Waterhouse, worked there for 6 months, quickly went to Melbourne and worked for Ciaron Maher. Ciaron Maher was so impressed, he sent her to Sydney to establish his Sydney stable. Then there were winners and more winners and more winners. She went out on her own. She found Zaaki at a tride sale, the Tattersall sale in the UK. She produced Mwanga, who won her first Group 1 in the Rosehill Guineas. The winners just kept coming. She's had more than 40 stakes successes, 171 winners alone in the 22-23 season. It's made her a household name. She's a sensation in racing. Welcome to the Heart of Racing, Annabel Neasham. Well, Annabel, when you read it out, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Racing's easy.
I actually didn't realise it had 40 stakes winners, actually. But yeah, it's been came here, as you said, on a working holiday visa, expected to be here for a year. And yeah, I think 7 years, nearly 8 years later, I'm still here.
But why did you come?
I actually was trying to get an assistant trainer job in the UK, and I just couldn't get one.
Why?
Even a pupil assistant, which basically
Really?
just harrow the gallops.
Why? Why couldn't you?
I don't know. Just tough to find the right sort of opportunity there. Wasn't even getting responses to the adverts I was applying to. So I thought, well, I'll go and spend a year in Australia, a year in America, and then I'll go back. I'd been rejected off your course,
Flying Start.
The Flying Start twice. I tried to apply for
That's
it twice.
the Godolphin where they pick up young people.
So
Will did that.
Yeah, so I thought, well, I'll try and do my own and do my own Flying Start and get it. I've always been really horsey, but I was pretty late into racing. So I thought I'd better go and get a bit more experience and use it as an opportunity to sort of travel the world a bit. So that's why initially I came out here. A friend of mine that I lived with at uni, Tom Ward, who was the one really that got me into racing, he got me the job with Gai. So
He was with John O'Shea for a while, was Tom?
yeah,
Came
he was
over here.
assistant trainer to John for a couple of years. I think in that transition when John went to Godolphin, and his girlfriend, who's now his wife, was working for Gai at the time. So,
So he did some sort of introduction, and Gai said, "Yeah,
yeah, exactly." And they said, well, initially it was, you can do a little bit in the office and you can ride. And then when I got there, I was mucking out, and it took me about a week to pluck up the courage to say, I've got my riding helmet and boots with me. So then I started riding.
How long were you with Gai for?
6 months. So I did 3 months in Sydney, and then when the carnival came around, she sent me down there. They obviously fill up their stables down there, and they always send a few staff. So I was lucky enough to go down for the carnival then.
And what were you doing? Were you hands-on starting to bits and pieces of training, or were you just riding? What were you actually doing?
Oh, well, in Sydney, obviously I was only there for 3 months, so it must have only been 2 months that I ran a barn. There was a little barn as you drive in. I think it was on Ascot Street. That little, as you drive into the race course, they've got.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've still got them, but there was 10 boxes just hidden in there.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my little area, and I was riding, and then when I went to Melbourne, I was riding and just doing
whatever.
Doing whatever.
And is that when you sort of met Ciaron in Melbourne?
Yeah,
there?
Sort of became pretty good mates with Dave Eustace, and then met Ciaron, and I actually met Ciaron properly in the atrium bar in the Crown Casino, and he said, I want to give you a job. And I said, oh, doing what? He said, whatever you want. You just write your job description. So at that time, I was sort of weighing up my options, and I had to. I think it's slightly changed now, but I was on a working holiday visa, and you can actually only do 6 months.
Yeah.
And then you had to move on or go and do your farm work, or you could do a year without your farm work. But if you wanted to do a second year, you have to do 90
3
days.
months.
You couldn't do a whole year for someone back
Yeah.
then. I think you can now. You had to only do 6 months. So I either had to get sponsored by Gai or sort of move on. So I was weighing up my options, but
So you moved on to Ciaron.
Ciaron.
Did you have to do the farm work in the end, or did you put a sidestep on it? Swerved it.
Probably got sponsored.
I got sponsored, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so Ciaron, working for him in Melbourne, was that where you learnt to train properly? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
this has all happened very fast. We're talking about what, 2018 here or something?
yeah, it did. Well, I lived with Dave, so that was you're completely engrossed in it. He would be doing the work list, sitting on the sofa, and you pick up so much when you're living with someone that's living and breathing it. And then Dave. I think the first time I really got into it was when Dave went away to England for a month in the winter. So I sort of filled in and did his role. But Ciaron was amazing like that. He just throw you in the deep end. I loved bloodstock. I wasn't sure at that moment in time that I wanted to be a trainer or not.
Yeah.
But I was doing the sales for him. So I'd go to all the sales. I suppose I was like a runner. You're always one step ahead of him pulling horses out. I wasn't necessarily selecting horses, but I was there sort of helping organise the lists and what have you. So you got to know a lot of the farm people.
And he's buying a lot.
He was buying a lot. Well, actually, the first year I went to the sales with him, he bought 5 at Magic Millions. So like,
And the last year?
oh, probably
100?
50.
Yeah.
So
Because he was going on a big steep rise at that time as well. That was around the time Darren Weir would have been.
Yeah, well, it was before then. I mean, Ciaron got very big. He took over Moody's stable.
That's right.
And then he had his 6 months out. But then when he came back, then he ended up taking over Darren's stable. So he got big very quickly. I think when I first started for him, he had 80 in work at Caulfield.
And then I remember you arriving at Rose Hill. Must have been after a couple of years with Ciaron.
But he sent you up here to do the Sydney stable.
But the Sydney stable was like 5 horses to begin with.
I had to persuade him to let me do that. So actually how it really started, I was doing the Easter sales, and Lucy Yeomans, who's obviously now training, she was up here with 4 horses at Rose Hill.
Yeah.
And she got kicked out on the track and broke her leg really badly. It actually hasn't really, I think she'll tell you, it hasn't really recovered properly.
Yeah.
It was a bad break. So all of a sudden, Ciaron's got 4 horses up here and no travelling foreman. So I said, oh, well, I can stay. So it was during the middle of the Easter sale. So I was going in and doing the horses before the sales, then nipping back and doing the afternoon shift. And then a lot of those horses carried on up to Brisbane. So I kept getting clothes sent up to me. I just hung around, and I didn't go back to Sydney Melbourne for 2 months.
Because I think it got up to about 7 or 8 horses at Rose Hill at that time.
Well, that was before then. Then I went back to Melbourne for about a month, and then Ciaron decided he was going to open a Sydney stable. We started with Dubious in the Breeders' Plate. He was the first horse, so it was just me and Dubious.
I remember that.
And it sort of it grew from there.
So how many horses did Ciaron end up having here, were you in charge of in Sydney?
Well, it started off with about 6 in the visitors' boxes.
Yeah.
And then it grew to about 10 in the visitors' boxes.
And then
Gerald was kind. He was giving us boxes.
And then Warwick Farm came.
Yeah, and then we were scouting for boxes. And then, and that was sort of my job to go drive around and try and find boxes. And then we found the barn that he's still in now at Warwick Farm. So it got up, when I left, we were up to about 50, 55.
And so how long did you do that for Ciaron in Sydney? Couple of years?
Couple of years, 2.5 years.
And so you've been on this unbelievable trajectory. You get off the plane, you work for Gai, you work for Ciaron, you're in Sydney, you open the stable for him in Sydney, and next thing you know, you think, I'll train on my own.
And
how did you make that decision that you backed yourself so young?
I think I've always, I don't think I'd actually thought about it really, but I think subconsciously I've always thought I won't want to work for someone forever. I've always been quite independent. I've always probably wanted to do something myself, whatever it was going to be. And I suppose after a while, during COVID, obviously you're always communicating down there, but I just sort of thought, I think I could maybe do this on my own, which you actually felt selfish even thinking that.
Yeah.
Because I've been given such a great opportunity, but I thought, I think I could have a crack at doing this myself. And, boxes came up, real opportunity there.
At Warwick Farm, there's some boxes were free, and you thought, well, if I got a license on my own, I could take those boxes. Yeah,
and I've still got that barn now. And then I was lucky every time a barn came up, I'd just try and get another barn if I can. We grew quite quickly, but it was a bit of it wasn't as nerve-wracking as you'd think, because I'd been in that position where probably a lot of other people hadn't been. It was just like the best setup you could have as a trainer, because we started with one horse in Sydney, and it was like, right, find the boxes, find the staff. Ciaron would let me do all of that. He'd let me pick the staff. You're almost like
You were doing it anyway.
it was just like the best. It was like
Grounding.
just starting over all again. I was trying to find boxes again, find staff again. It was like I'd done it 2 years ago for Ciaron.
When you went through that process, what was the catalyst? I mean, like, you had a very good relationship with Aquis to begin with, probably still do. Were there any external factors of people that sort of like encouraged you, said, we'll back you? Were there some supporters
You
that
needed some
started,
big clients.
yeah, from the start that you like, when I look back on it, they were the really instrumental to my start?
Yeah, they certainly were, and they put a lot of faith into me. I think they were keen to, and they said they were keen to try and have a lot of their horses in one spot.
Mm.
And I ended up with Mwanga, which
A lot of pressure, though.
pretty amazing. You've sort of a guilt feeling as well, because he obviously come from a great stable that were doing a good job with him. But I think Mr. Fung was keen to try and give me a good start, and they'd give me a lot of young colts.
Yeah.
And I think they were keen to sort of give me maybe a 3-year-old to help give me a kick along, and that he did.
Wasn't
He was
bad.
my first Group 1 winner.
He won the Rose Hill Guineas.
He won the Rose Hill Guineas, and he was a great horse. But I was just to have him and then have Zaaki come along at the same time. I had 2 headline horses.
How did you
straight
buy
off the bat.
Zaaki?
So I had a couple of guys in Melbourne that were keen. They were keen to contact me, said they were keen to buy a horse. Probably had a budget of about sort of 200-ish. Wanted to buy a tried
Oz
horse.
or Guineas?
Oz.
Yeah.
So I contacted Stuart Bowman and said, "Can you find me one horse?" And that was the Tattersall's Horses in Training Sale. And he came up with one horse, and it was Zaaki. And he said, "Look, he's slightly lost his form, but he said he's always been a really good horse. He held, I don't know if he still does, but he probably does, the mile track record at Epsom. He said he's a good horse, and he just might be a good headline horse for you." But the reserve was 300,000, I think. But he actually ended up passing in, and we got him for 150. So
ambitious reserve.
the boys they did. So the guys that said they wanted to buy a horse, it was slightly over their budget, but they took three quarters of the horse, and
then you had Carl.
And then Carl jumped in.
Carl Holtz, he's the Zaaki colours, but he's a tremendous human.
The best.
So when you talk about 150, was that 150 guineas?
Guineas, yeah. So it was about 300 landed here. But
yeah,
Carl rang me when I first started training and said, I'll support you. I think he sort of did the same with you. I think like he's really good at supporting. He
young
likes
trainers,
sort of young up and coming trainers, and that's I feel like a lot of people in this country are like that.
I agree with that. It's an incredible thing. Like, I've seen my uncles and father, to some respect, they're the greatest at starting new training banners. But I've been on board with a few of them. I've never seen the support that I got when I first started, even though I was in Scone, for people that want to help young people. Like all the internationals that come over here, and that every trainer goes, "Oh, it's not that special here." But until you realise how much opportunity you get for being ambitious as a young person here, you just can't see it.
Well, you got Bon Ho on the hook.
Well, that
produced a Magic Millions 3-year-old Guinness.
I had him.
Yeah,
Short. I didn't have much luck.
So all of this stuff is happening. You're sitting there in front of me. You seem so relaxed about it, like it was natural. But when you look at it from the outside, I think about Annabel Neasham. Well, this happened so fast. There was stuff going on, and you became a household name, like I said in the intro, so quickly. It was like I was watching the races, and all of a sudden this Annabel Neasham's on there after every second race talking about Ciaron Maher horses. Now she's gone out on her own. Now there's Group 1 winners. Did it need Zaaki and Mwanga? Like, did it just send you on a trajectory you couldn't believe?
I think they massively accelerated it.
They certainly did.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
They were... I think I won 6. I had the favourite for the Cox Plate within a year of training.
And it
just doesn't happen.
You had 3 runners.
At the time, you don't.
You had 3 runners in a Cox Plate.
Yeah, but you're conscious at the time that you're really lucky. But now I look back on it. Now Zaaki's not really at the peak of his powers anymore. I mean, I'm still lucky I've got the likes of Learning to Fly and Sunshine in Paris, but, Zaaki was going around $1.20 in Group 1s every time he went around. And I was definitely conscious of how lucky I was, but now sort of that's slightly in the past.
You're like, oh, I'd love to have that again.
Wow,
where's the next one coming from?
Just makes, you're like, that just... if a new trainer came in now and within a year was having my favourite Cox Plate, you'd be like, whoa.
Yeah.
But you're seeing,
that's what I was trying to get at.
But I mean, you're seeing, like, Sarah Ryan's a bit the same. She's just suddenly come on the scene and she's every Saturday got she seems to be winning a race in town every week. It does, and you go, wow, she's started quick.
You got to admit that there must be a part of you now, like, because you're like on the other side.
Zaaki.
No, but you're on the other side of the fence now. Looking at the person that's having the really good run of luck, you can actually see it. And while a lot of people in this industry are great people, participants-wise, it's such a competitive landscape that jealousy is a big thing for participants. You must look at Sarah Ryan and go, sometimes she's winning race after race. You look at her and go, Jesus, it's like that envy rolls through you. And like, I wonder how grounding, take us through the morning of the Cox Plate when Zaaki ran the temperature. Like, you can talk, it might have started a bit earlier than just the morning of it, but
it didn't actually, no. That was really a big shot in the stomach.
But
all of his owners have now heard me cry.
Yeah, but that must have been a little bit of a humbling experience because everything had been going to script until probably that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, he was, after his Doomben Cup win, he was favourite for the Cox Plate straight away, and he remained so until then. And I got in that morning. It was really difficult during COVID to even get down there. Todd Pollard, who now runs our Queensland stable, him and Raphael Marcelli he's gone back to France now, but he's a great fella. He was an ex-jockey and he came over and was riding work for us, and he used to ride Zaaki every day. And him and Todd, they were about to shut the borders, and him and Todd just got in a car and whizzed down before the borders shut. They had to do 2 weeks quarantine down there, and Nick Ryan looked after Zaaki in that time, but we got them through the border so that you want your own team with your horse when it's favourite for the Cox Plate. So that was sort of stressful enough build up in itself. But I think they must have slightly restricted things. Somehow I got down there for the Cox Plate. And I came in that morning, and we always give our horses just a little trot on race morning first thing at 4:00. And I walked in and said to Todd, all good? He's like, yeah. And then I looked at him and said, you all right? And he goes, Zaaki's 38.5.
So just so people know, 38.1 is 38.1 to 0.3 is okay, but it's on the highest side. But they're not really sick until you get about to 39. They're really sick.
But 38.5
on the morning of the Cox Plate is high.
38.3. Like if and we take their temps every day, so you normally have a rough. Like often they'll sit around the same. I think I remember Gerald telling me Schnitzel always had a high normal temperature.
Yeah, they can have.
But like 38.5, you're like, and I'm like, are you just hot?
Yeah.
Because they can if they get stirred up. No, he wasn't hot. But he trotted around. He was fine. And then I was like, okay. I said he'd be fine. Let's just let him cool off.
Take it later.
Take him for his trot. Cool. So we wait an hour, take it again, and it's 38.7. And by this point, there's a guard. They send these security guards to sit outside your box, and they write down everything you're doing. I mean, obviously trying to make sure you're not cheating. And they're sort of like, what are you doing? It's like taking his temperature every half an hour. And it just kept going up and up and up. And I was just like, I just didn't. And J-Mac had rang me really early. He was out on a walk. And I was like, yeah, everything's all good.
Except
the horse was 38.5,
and
now
it's
it's
going
38.7.
up and up and up. I rang Dave Eustace at about 7:00. And I was, oh, jeez.
At what point did you?
He said, just run him, he'll be right.
But at what point did you go? I guess it must have been when you saw it creeping up. You're like,
I knew it was buggered from 4 a.m. really.
Yeah.
But you just hope. I actually got about 6 different thermometers and was trying every thermometer. Sometimes you can get a dodgy thermometer.
A broken one that's going to say 37.1. Yes.
Well, you'd be amazed. Sometimes when they get old, they actually do give the wrong reading.
Yeah. But, that is something. You always, whenever you have an important one that has a temp, the first thing you say is get a different thermometer and get someone else to do it. I bet you they did it wrong. Like you're trying to find.
Try and find
owners
enemies.
sometimes don't realize is we want to run the horses. That's how we're making our money. That's how, like, we don't make any money out of training. In fact, most training businesses lose money off other people.
Off training fees.
Off training fees. They seem so
Exorbitant.
high, but the reality is most training businesses rely on some of their prize money to break even. So you need to run these horses. Most trainers don't want to scratch, particularly if you're odds on in a Cox Plate. I haven't experienced that, but I can imagine the want to run would have been immense.
Yeah, well, it was, but then you sort of, and he got to about 39, I think 39 1,
right.
and it was just that awful.
It's all over by
But
then, isn't it?
At least it got
Awful.
up to that much, though. Like, imagine if it only hovered around
you wouldn't believe-
35.7.
So I do pre-race bloods 2 days out from Metro runners. We don't do it with all the runners, but certainly all our Saturday runners get a blood taken on a Thursday, because then you identify whether there's a problem or not.
And the white blood cells weren't up.
His bloods were perfect on Thursday. After we'd scratched him, we took another blood, and his serum amyloid A, which is a sort of inflammation indicator, that was at about 250. Anyway, so we treated him. We redid a blood on Monday, and I kid you not, it was perfect.
Yeah. He just got
I've actually got, and when you take the blood, they're actually, when they send you the bloods, they've always got them on, like, all the dates next to each other. So you could see the 3 bloods all next to each other, and they all look
Makes you
perfect,
feel
bar the
sick.
one day of the Cox Plate. I was just like, you are, well, I must have walked under a ladder or something.
Crossed a cat.
But that's luck, isn't it? That's what horse racing is all about. What happened after that? Did he run in the McKinnon, or did you?
He did. He won the McKinnon.
He won it,
and
yeah.
I remember,
Jamie
would have made you
Carr
feel
rode it.
worse.
no, James
Oh,
Road.
right.
That was the week he had about 10 winners.
Yeah.
But he galloped him on, and I wasn't down there on the Saturday, because I think it was Golden Eagle Day. He galloped him on the Saturday, and he didn't gallop that well. And I said, I'm just going to pull the pin. And James said, no. He said, can you come down on Tuesday? I reckon I want to lead on him, not sit off. And that track's too tight for him. I said, okay. So Melbourne Cup day, I'm down there, and James said, I'll gallop him. But he's basically like, don't tell him, I don't want to have to do track work for anyone. It's Melbourne Cup day. I'll just sneak in and just do him. So there's James sneaking in and doing him. The horse was feeling that well by then. It jumped to shadow on the winning post, and James is half hanging off.
On Melbourne Cup day.
Raf's on another horse next to him and like pulling him back on. James came in and
Jesus
said, "This
Christ.
reptile." 10 hours later, James has just won his first Melbourne
Yeah,
Cup.
wow. Amazing.
Like, he could have put an end to that as well, but he nearly dropping him. But that was a good day. That was like a relief day.
Yeah.
So I think a few people were
They
like,
were the gods
you're
giving you
brave
one back."
running him after a temp.
But
I think your dad might have been one of them, actually.
But it justified a lot of. It justified his favouritism in the Cox Plate. It justified all of your decisions. So since then, obviously your stable's grown and you've been buying a lot of horses. You've got a stable in Queensland. Did the clients just flow? What happens to people like your hot property? Like, are people just emailing? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, sort of lucky enough to train for, like we were saying earlier about opportunity. Like, I was training for Coolmore in my first year of training, which is just unheard of in England.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have a first season trainer training for Coolmore.
No.
But I think people probably see you with those colours, and maybe they think, well, if they're happy to send her a horse,
We'll send her a
we'll
horse.
send one. So we got sent quite a few horses, but maybe Ciaron had been so ingrained. The whole buying yearlings have probably been so ingrained into me that I go to the sale and I just buy what I liked, and I was probably a bit ballsy. But I've got a girl who still works for me now, Alex Turpin, and she does all my sales, and she's fantastic. I used to do
And
sales.
she's picking out horses and.
No, she's selling them. So,
okay.
well,
Oh, sorry.
although
That's just sales from the office. Yeah.
She'd be involved in the process.
well, she is. Yeah, she's bought one horse on her own without me, and I went mad and it ended up being Libertad, who won 2 group races. So she should probably be picking out more.
But it's
And so she takes care of the emails that are coming in, and I'm interested in a share, and I'll take this or that or the other. Yeah.
And I don't think without that, I'm too busy training.
No, you can't.
I
handle
wouldn't
it.
have, but you wouldn't then be able to buy. I think as a trainer, I think if you're training large numbers and you're wanting to buy large numbers, you can't do it without a sales team. I think you just have to.
Yeah, I
You look
agree.
at, but I used to love selling at Ciaron's, but I think I just hate it now. I hate selling.
Yeah, it's not What people don't
Well,
realize.
I know from
Yeah.
trying
'Cause
to
if
get
they're
you
no
on the
good,
phone. I
you
try and
feel
get Will on
bad.
the phone during sales time, and
Well,
it's like, mate, I'll ring you back.
Yeah, it's just the whole thing is there's so many responsibilities of a trainer, and I reckon as I certainly knew it growing up. Is I thought I knew everything when I was growing up in stables. Like I was like, this I could do this training, Kate. Like this is easy. I see it. But until you're the last line of defense, you're the goalkeeper. You pay for the mistakes. You just don't know how much responsibility and how much that stress weighs on you. And then going and selling a dream while you're trying to put out fires every day for one thing or another. It's very hard to have that optimistic flair about you when you're trying to deal with the day-to-day process. But one thing that I don't think people know as much about Annabel, but you did the Mongol Derby. Was that before you came to Australia or just before? Or were you here?
No, I think that was just before I went to run the Sydney stable for
Right.
Ciaron. I was midway through my time at Ciaron's.
So what's the Mongol Derby? It's a 1,000-kilometre.
It's the
horse
only
racing.
derby I've won. Is what it is.
Yes.
What is it? Explain what it is.
So it's a race. You actually swap horses every 40 k's, but it's a 1,000-kilometre race on horseback across the
From-
Mongol steppe on
Wow.
Genghis Khan's old postal route.
How
Yeah.
educated are these horses you're jumping on?
They're all what's the name? What's the name of the company? The Adventurists.
Oh, yeah.
So you did the
Yeah,
Mongol
I did the
Rally.
Mongol Rally, which is you drive from
It's the
London
lazy
to
person
Mongolia.
version.
Yeah. Well, kind of.
I actually
I got stuck on the Caspian Sea for 2 weeks, which was a bit scary. So it didn't feel that lazy then.
Yeah, fair enough. You have to pay quite a lot to do it. We were lucky to be sponsored by Sportsbet. I basically said to Ciaron was keen to do it, so I said, "Oh, well,
He hurt himself.
yeah, he fell off Jamaica the week before and broke his leg." So Adrian Corboy, his breaker, came in his place. But at the time, I said, "I'll do all the paperwork and everything, and I'll just piggyback off your famous name
Yeah.
and get
Yeah,
PointsBet to
perfect.
sponsor us." So we didn't have they paid for it, and we wore all their gear, and they're big now. They
But
were
do you-
just starting then.
But do you ever look back on an experience like that and think, like I certainly look back on doing the rally and look back and think, wow, I could just never find the time to do that now. And it's like an experience you'll never be able to replicate.
Yeah, I actually want to do the tuk-tuk one across India.
Oh, it looks amazing,
Yeah, that
doesn't
looks
it?
quite good.
I'll
But
race
you
you.
wouldn't have time now, probably. Although, having said that, that was sort of end of July, I think early August
Mm.
time. But it was an amazing
How many days does it take to ride 1,000k?
6.
6 days.
Yeah, 6.5.
Wow. So it's about 150 plus k's a day.
Yeah, you're riding from 6 in the morning till 8 at night. You can't ride outside those hours. They track you on a tracker. But all the nomadic herder, it's it's all their horses. They're not necessarily, I think a lot of them are broken in for the race. So
There's
they're
not a lot of Zaakis in there.
There's not a lot of Zaakis, no. They're small, they're little shuffly
comfortable?
movers. They're very uncomfortable. And the hard saddle's very uncomfortable. But you pick your horse, and you just hope that you're going to get from A to B. But the good thing is if it bolts with you, there's no fence to run through because there's no fencing anywhere.
They'll get tired
It's
eventually.
all open. Yeah,
But
eventually they'll get tired.
But your riding pedigree's obviously second to none. It's been part of your whole life. Is it important for a trainer to have amazing skills like that? You know, like to say myself, I can't ride a horse. And if I wanted to be a horse trainer, you just wouldn't have enough knowledge. You know what I mean? Like, but you have the knowledge of riding a horse, how horses feel, all those things. It's a great advantage.
Oh, I mean, it's probably a great advantage if you're a great rider. I always thought Mark Newnham I was always envious that he could just jump on and gallop his horses. And I would do that when I was fit and I was galloping horses, but I was never a great rider. But I did a lot of eventing, equestrian,
Yeah.
sort of up to international level. I think that helped me a lot, that
Yeah.
background, because you're learning how to make horses go correctly, bending the right way, being on the right leads. They've got to be
Understanding
sound
horses,
and
yeah.
fit. They've got to gallop 9 minutes over a cross-country course, and then they've got to trot up sound in front of a ground jury and be careful enough and energetic enough to jump round show jumps the next day. So I think a lot of those skills are definitely transferable to training in terms of horsemanship. And now I love tinkering around. If there's a horse that gets its head up in the air or it's got its mouth, I quite like tinkering around with gear. And I've got a couple of girls that are eventers that ride for me now. And I love putting them on to go and do a bit of dressage work, or they'll just get the horse going. You know, some track work riders have only ever ridden racehorses, and they ride short and they perched up and they're great, but they get them around. But these equestrian riders can actually make them use themselves a bit better. So I like having a mixture of those riders in the stable. But so my eventing background's probably helped with that. But probably too busy to ride now. Rob and I always ride on a Sunday morning.
Because you haven't had enough during the week of horses that Sunday morning.
Well, you sort of have to. The riders now are like, how do you explain track work riders now? Precious and
entitled.
Yeah, so they don't work Sundays, a lot of them.
No.
The good ones, because they don't have to, because they'll go next, you know. So I quite like that on a Sunday morning. We punch a few around the bull ring.
To be fair, they're entitled to, because I say entitled, but they are entitled to, because it's one of the most acutely like highly skilled jobs in racing is being a good track work rider.
Yeah.
Like you could not pay them enough.
They're worth their weight in gold. I joke about them saying they're precious.
But if they left, we'd be in a lot of strife.
How many horses can one track work rider get through in a morning?
Well, debatable. Some of them say only
Between
6 or 7. I'm like, we'll make that 10.
I know in the country, certainly I've seen track work riders up to 18 a morning in the country. Like, they just go one after the other.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's one of the things before when you talked about, oh, gee, it's expensive to train a horse. You know, I don't know, metropolitan fees, 130 a day or something, whatever.
Plus.
Yeah. So when you go, oh, well, gee, that's expensive to train a horse, but that's 130 a day. There's a track work rider. There's people working there. There's yourselves working. There's fees on the boxes, all that sort of stuff. It adds up.
Well, it used to be as well.
Wages
Probably
add
back
up.
in the day, if track work riders were normally full time, you know, they'd ride, then they'd go home, they'd do the split shift, they'd come back in the afternoon.
Go again.
And they'd wash the horses,
they'd
saddle them all.
They'd brush them at the end of the morning, and they were part of your full-time crew. But now, I assume it's the same at Rose Hill with your team, but now the track work riders are that few and far between, the good ones, that they've got it, you know, they can afford to just say, well, I'm only riding, and they got off the last horse and they leave. So you don't then have them in the afternoon. So you've actually got to employ all these extra ground staff that come and do the afternoon shift, because the riders, they don't, because there's such a shortage of them. Now a track work riding job, very rarely.
They're calling the shots.
Very rarely do they, work afternoons now.
We'll keep rolling on here, Annabel, because we've got to come to a close soon. But what is in the future for you? Or you just keep rolling? Are you Gai Waterhouse one day?
I mean, yeah, that would be pretty cool to be Gai Waterhouse one day. But look, I don't have. We're just sort of. I suppose you said we're just bumbling along at the moment. I don't have. I think for me, I just Group 1s are what I like. I think we've probably.
Don't we all?
Yeah. Well, it's something obvious. I suppose quality over quantity, and at the moment I've probably gone a little bit the wrong way. We've got probably too many horses at the moment.
How many in training? How many boxes?
That's a sticky question for a big trainer.
We have about 40.
Every
zero missing there.
Every trainer we've interviewed, no matter what size they are, they say they've got 40.
Yeah. So does Peter Moody. Was the best when he said he's going to come back with a boutique stable, and it was 180 before the end of the week. You know, it's like, but look, Annabelle's right, but you need to have quantity to get quality.
Yeah.
But there's a fine line. So, I mean, for us, we're very managed. We've got a fantastic team, and you can only do what your team can do. But for us, we're probably going to just slightly change our model a little bit and try and, whether we reduce sort of by 20 or 30%, just try and reduce a little bit. And, because at the moment, a lot of those horses that aren't going to be metro, we've got an option for them in Queensland.
Yeah.
But then you end up growing, So I think for us, we'll try and make it a little bit more concise and try and aim. I mean, I look at Joe Pride's model, and he's amazing. He hasn't got that many numbers, but they're all, I think quality. He must just, if they're not going to be Saturday horses, he must just get them out and get another one in.
To be fair, he's been toiling away for quite a while.
It must take a while to get to that point. And you do need numbers, because they can come from anywhere. Good horses.
It is sort of I am very envious of Joe. He's not a big yearling buyer himself.
So he doesn't need to.
I know, which is, I'd love to be in that position where I don't have to.
Where they're just coming
There's
to
no
you.
debt. You're just like, yeah, I'll take you and you and you, but
you'd be a
you.
shopaholic, Will. You'd still want to go and buy something.
Yeah, I like that.
I know. It's
So
fun
do
going
you.
to the sales. Isn't it?
Got expensive
sales are
taste,
intoxicating.
unfortunately.
Okay, you got to tell us what we're looking out for in the autumn. Now, you're under a lot of pressure because when we spoke to J-Mac before the spring started,
What did he say?
he said there's a horse from Hong Kong called Romantic Warrior.
Yeah.
He absolutely
Mind you, it was
declared.
favourite for
I
the
know, but
Cox
still,
Plate.
it did the business no
Yeah.
matter what. No matter what. So you're under pressure.
Sunshine in Paris looks great. She had a setback before the Everest, which was another character building moment.
Another one, yeah.
Castagna, I think she's maybe being a bit overlooked in the slipper market. I thought she was really good, and she's only going to be better in a really high pressure 1200
We're
meter
only
race.
talking about the Colts this year, aren't they?
Yeah, but she's got to be one of the standout fillies.
Yeah.
And maybe of one that you haven't seen, I've got an import called Mighty Ulysses.
We like that.
So keep an eye out for him. The only unfortunate thing is he's come from
Stable mail.
John Gosden, and it's hard to
improve
a horse
You don't
off
need
Gosden.
to do much, though.
I don't need to improve the horse, though. He's already shown that he's sort of top level, but he's a good horse to look out for.
Okay. Mighty Ulysses. Okay, good stuff. Well, Annabel Neasham, thanks so much for your time and your generosity today and sharing your story. Let's hope there's another Zaaki, Mwanga, learning to fly, dozens of them.
I hope so. We'll hope. And thanks for having me, and off to the fish market now.
Beautiful.
Johnny next door.